Hey guys, Youthful Youths here. Today we're going to be going over the portfolio for the week. So to start off, we can see here that the stock market was pretty red on Friday. Um, you know, I think NASDAQ was down nearly, almost 5% on Friday. SPY was down about 2.5%. So you can see a lot of companies here, such as AVGO, Intel, AMD, pretty dark, dark green or red, I mean. Amazon, Tesla down 10% almost each, just kind of nuts. All in all, just really bloody for most of the tech stuff, obviously. There's some good side stuff, such as financials, healthcare did pretty decent, energy. So, yeah. Just to show you how that looked for the TQQQ here, we had a 14.28% drop on Friday. And I unfortunately was holding some of that. And I'll get into that in a second here. So you can see here that the P&L for the week we're down about 10.6%, which is pretty significant, nearly $7,500, which really sucks. But unfortunately, that's not the end of the. Well, the good news is we're still actually up for the year, still up almost 10% for the year. And the good news is I really do feel like this is going to maybe rebound tomorrow. I don't know if it's exactly going to be tomorrow, but I would be. I think we're going to gain most of this back pretty shortly. So something like that, Friday happening was just kind of out of the blue a little bit. I mean, there's some reasons for it, but I don't think that it warranted as much pressure as it actually popped off. So that being said, we can break that down here. So you can see Composer down 9.36%, M1 down, or actually, that was the Friday, but down 12.24%. M1 down 2.28%. And then Webull, fortunately, when the portfolio is red, the Webull portfolio is actually green. And a large bit of that has to do with both. Yeah. The stock market not doing too hot, as well as the Bitcoin actually falling quite a bit. So, yeah, you can see BTC here for the last 5 days. It has done a little bit of rebounding, but you can see here it's actually dipped quite a bit, down 20% in the last month. So, yeah, and you can see how much this actually affected us here. So this used to be almost 40. Because we're only in about a year and a half of our portfolio, large days like this are going to swing that number quite a bit. So it is what it is. But yeah. Take a look here. So we actually started Monday positive, up 1,000. Then we lost pretty much all of it over the course of the next 2 days. And then Thursday we were down 3%, and Friday we were down 8%. Says that, but I think that's actually incorrect. Nope, that's actually correct. So sorry, I just added these numbers here, so I'm still trying to figure them out. But yeah, so we're down to 61,000. We were actually almost at 70,000. You can see here we are at 69.6. So almost $350 away, nearly, or $340 away from 70K, and now we're almost down to 60K. But again, I do feel very positive about it. I think we're gonna come back up, but there's a few things that we could have done better, especially on these 3 days here, and that is holding VXX more, or the VIX products in general, more not YOLO, so to speak, right? And so I've made some changes. Instead of Golden Lotus portfolio, or Golden Lotus fund, we're now on a new Eternal Spring fund, which I've created. So it performs pretty close to the one we actually had. But you can see here, for example, the last week, if I pull it up here, bear with me here. If I pull over the last week or so, let's do the 31st. You can see we would have been down, 13%. But if we come over here to the Gold Lotus Fund and do the same thing here. Yeah, but it's for a different reason. So it's not because VXX, it's actually because it actually held more TQQQ. For example, you can see here, this is the previous portfolio we had, which was would have been 50% TQQQ, 25% QQQ, and 25% SPY. Now, if you look at the Eternal Spring Fund, of what it's holding currently, it should be 80% TQQQ, 10% QQQ, and 10% SPY. Now, it's not always like that. In fact, if I go just let's say the last month here, and I take a look at the historical allocations, you can see this is, for example, how it was on Thursday. So you can see Thursday we had 10% QQQ, 6.2% box, 10% SPY, and then 73% TQQQ. And that we had that for a couple days. On Tuesday, we had 70% VXX, 23% box, and 5% TQQQ. So there's a little bit of a hedging going on in good areas. Again, I actually think the algorithm did its job, obviously, by going into this far into TQQQ. It looks bad. Excuse me, because really, like I said, we have somewhat of an anomaly. This was sitting, I think, at like 70 something RSI, so it wasn't really overbought by any means. By it, I mean TQQQ, which is, the main signal, for example. And then it just dropped out of nowhere without you can't really stop these one session drops, unfortunately. So with that being, I mean, there is a way to do that, but I don't advise it. It's basically doing a 1-day check. But again, I really don't advise that. But so current holdings are, like I said, around 80%, 10%, 10%. So there's that. Hoping that we rebound. And the nice thing is, because we're actually in 80% TQQQ instead of about 50%, if we do rebound, let's say completely tomorrow, we're going to get actually more than what we came out of, right? So we went down about 9%, but there's actually a high possibility, for example, that if we were to go back up 14%, let's say we break even tomorrow on TQQQ, we'll actually end up higher than we were on before Friday started. Now, that being said, we still had a pretty bad day on Thursday and a pretty bad day on Tuesday. So who knows if we're going to be able to rebound that completely. We'd be basically looking for a 10% move, which is not impossible. Like I said, we basically were down about 9% on the portfolio, and that was with those holdings on Friday. So it's possible that we rebound past that. Who knows? I think that will probably take a couple days, but we'll see. Moving on into M1 Finance. So as a reminder, really don't have a ton on here anymore. It's just a few different sectors. Actually, not even really sectors. I wouldn't really call it sectors at this point. It's more of a few different tickers. I think we only have like 6 tickers or something like that, but we'll see. So this is going to be a little bit harder than usual, but you can see real estate up 3.85%. Or 3.83%. You can see we only have AMT there. Then we had, actually, I don't think I can do like a holdings, but consumer staples, that's Procter & Gamble up 2%. And then healthcare, we had Vertex just barely down. The opposite side of things, this is Microsoft down even more. It really sucks. And if we go to the activity, before we go to the other stuff, you can see we've got a couple of dividends here. One from Visa for $2.47. We got security interest, our security lending interest, and then a Honeywell dividend for $5. And if we go sort here to here, you can see Home Depot is 14% down, 10% down on MasterCard, and 6% down on Microsoft. So the other week when I said we were positive on these, they could very easily flip, and they did. So a lot of these did flip. Some of them are more stable than the others, but I don't know. 7 positions. That's what we have. Annoying nonetheless. But it is what it is. Nothing we can really do except either sell or keep it. And I'm definitely not gonna sell quite yet because we're in the red. Like I've explained before. Obviously, if we get closer to the end of this year, for example, and we're still holding these and they're still red, I probably will sell them to offset some taxes potentially. But I don't know, man. That's way down the road. So I doubt most of those are going to be red by the end of the year. And at least that's the hope. But moving on into the last part of our portfolio, which is Webull. So like I said, we had actually a pretty good week. Started the week at 11.7% up, then almost 18% up, then almost 14% up, down 4%, and then almost 13% up. So quite a bit of movement up. We went from we're up about $175 on this, which is about a 63% gain on that for the week. So that's pretty cool. You can see how that looks on the chart. We still have a long time to go, or a lot to go, but yeah, not too bad. But yeah, that is it, guys. I would say there's some stuff that we probably need to look at on. Hopefully, like I said, TQQQ is, or the Qs are just going back up, and you can see here that currently, according to the futures market, which again is not always indicative of the next day, especially not on the weekends, there's a lot of stuff that can still happen. But we can see here that the NASDAQ is showing about 0.79, which for us, well, with TQQQ would be almost, that's like 20, almost 2.4% up, I think, which is nice, about 2.5%. And what else are we holding? We're holding QQQ as well as SPY. So overall, we're probably fine if this stays that case. Yeah. But guys, that is it for me. And as always, I wish you guys a well to the future.